I think we need to look at what happened on October 7, but also what happened on October 6, and take all of the context of the situations. What we are often framed is that this all happened, that there's a war between Israel and Hamas. Israel's at war with Palestinians. When a settler colony comes in and needs to extinguish, to eradicate the indigenous people, they will do what they did in the country I was born in Australia, in North America, in New Zealand, etc. Israel failed. The Zionist experiment failed in ethnically cleansing and extinguishing all of the Palestinians. And the Palestinians, for an oppressor, peace is when the oppressed isn't resisting, when they're silent. And that was
Would you categorise
6th.
October the 7th as an act of resistance?
I would classify Palestinians having a right to fight against their oppressors
No,
as
that
legitimate.
wasn't the question. Was what happened on October the 7th 2 years ago an act of resistance?
Palestinians rose up and resisted Israeli oppression,
But this is my problem. It wasn't an act of resistance. It was an act of despicable terrorism.
So I can absolutely
Babies
condemn.
being kidnapped, Holocaust victims being kidnapped, people being tortured, set on fire, homes set ablaze.
We live in this world where nothing can justify October 7, yet October 7 justifies everything.
But you did justify it.
731 days.
But you did just justify
731 days where a baby has been killed every hour.
I understand.
Israel has used starvation as a weapon.
I have been very critical of the Israeli government. But the reason,
haven't been.
Well, I have been. You haven't been listening. But the reason early on I was very emphatic that Israel had a right to defend itself, and the reason I
Israel doesn't have a right to defend itself.
Well, of course they do.
No, it doesn't.
Of course they do. But the reason...
Why does it?
OK, if you don't think they do, that's fine. But we'll come to that.
Well, international law is very explicit. It says a country cannot or doesn't have the right to imprison people, to impose apartheid on them,
Sorry,
to
if
genocide
the country
them.
has 1,200 people, if it's murder, it has a right to defend itself.
Against the people that it occupies?
Right. But you've already framed it as resistance. And my point to you is...
Palestinians are allowed to resist.
If you frame an act of...
And I'm against the killing of civilians.
If you frame an act... Well, you're not, though. You call it an act of resistance.
No, the breaking out of Gaza, the fight of
They killed 1,200 people.
I absolutely am.
They wounded 7,000 more.
Every innocent
They kidnapped
person.
babies and grandmothers. How's that resistance?
Israeli ministers have protested in front of prisons for the right to rape Palestinian prisoners. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not talking about October the 7th.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the days since
Why would
October
you call
7th.
that resistance?
Well, Palestinians, do you expect the world wants to see a situation of October 6th again?
I expect any civilised, decent person with an ounce of humanity to categorise what happened on October the 7th as a despicable act of terrorism by 3,000 terrorists who poured over a border, who attacked a music festival, killing hundreds of young people, kidnapping them.
I've been unequivocal time after time condemning the killing of civilians.
You said you just called an act of resistance. Why would you condemn an act of resistance?
Piers, I am very clear that human beings have a right to live, that killing innocent civilians
is
whether that is killed by a masked gunman, a Hamas operative.
You literally called it 5 minutes
ago
an act of resistance.
Palestinians will resist, whether that is the boycott,
why would you condemn an act of resistance?
Yes, I'm condemning the killing of civilians, and I will continue to do that. Palestinians will resist their occupiers.
Was it an act of terrorism or was it an act of resistance?
Israeli terrorism has existed, yeah, absolutely, since Balfour and
from
and
Hamas that day.
What?
Was it an act of terrorism?
No, I'm not going to call it an act of terrorism.
What would you call it?
I'm going to call it part of the Palestinian resistance.
Right, so therefore legitimate.
Well, Palestinians have a right to fight for freedom.
Right, so why are you just pretending you care about the deaths of civilians? You just called it an act
of course I care. I mean,
you
why
said
are you saying that I'm inhumane?
They have a right to commit.
I want to know why nobody
resistance.
cared about Palestinians on October 6th.
A lot
and
of
for the
people cared about
27,500
a lot of
days
people
before
cared
that,
about Palestinians.
like Daniela Weiss. They don't care about us. Israel's got a Palestinian
problem. I'm sure
problem.
she doesn't.
There is nothing pro-Palestinian about Hamas as an organisation, and they are an organisation that needs to be destroyed for the well-being of Israelis and Palestinians alike.
And the way to destroy that is to destroy every single school, hospital, the IVF clinic, 4,000 unborn embryos, to imprison 10,000 people, to hostage 2 million Palestinians. Every Palestinian is hostage. Is hostage to Israeli apartheid. My father is buried in land that is strange to him, not next to his grandfather, grandmother, great-grandmother, great-grandfather. That's apartheid, that's genocide, that's Israel, and the world has seen it.
Death to the IDF. You think that's acceptable to sing that in the UK?
You know, if you have a look at what the IDF is doing today, if you have a look...
Well, my question is that acceptable? Do you agree with him?
Look, I'm not going to be saying those words, but I'm not going to be denying artists the opportunity. I'm not condemning anything, Piers. What I want to condemn is Israel's actions.
You don't condemn anything, do you? You don't think you condemn Israel?
Western support for a government that is killing, maiming, destroying humanity.
But why should anybody, with respect,
early on
Nasser,
genocide,
with respect, why should anyone condemn Israel for their response, given that you refused to condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th?
I condemn the killing of innocent civilians.
But you didn't, though. You said the whole thing was rightful resistance.
I said I condemn.
No, you began to equivocate when I took you on.
No, I don't want to equivocate.
But then you repeated, to me, it's a rightful act of resistance.
People are allowed to resist their occupiers. It's international law.
Then you're endorsing what happened.
An occupier?
Respectfully. Was Hind Rajab a terrorist? 355
Hind Rajab was never a target.
355 bullets.
There's a difference between a legitimately declared war, which is justified, and civilian casualties in war, and walking into someone's house on a Jewish holiday and kidnapping and murdering children. There is a difference. That is not what the IDF is doing. Whatever mistakes the IDF has made, that is not what the IDF is doing.
Emily, the world has seen your lies. You can shout over me. You can use all of...
But Nasser, here's my point.
What we have, the world has abandoned the Palestinians yet again, we are being forced to negotiate with our genocideers while they genocide us. This has to be removed from this situation where we have a master servant, where the boot of oppression, the boot of genocide, and we're having to try and speak to it from on the ground. It needs to go to an international forum like the United Nations. Imagine Tony Blair and Trump get to decide how Gaza gets rebuilt, how Palestinians are compensated, what sort of accountability mechanisms. It's absolutely absurd. What the world has risen up, and we used to say in our thousands and our millions we're all Palestinians. We say in our millions and our billions, the whole world has risen up because they've seen the ideology that Emily believes in, this racist ideology that wants to kill every Palestinian and to take all the land. And according to Danielle Weiss, from the Nile to the Euphrates. So that's Jordan, Saudi Arabia. She also doesn't think Palestinians have a right to a country, and what might that look like?
Well, I do.
Do I get to go home?
That's not true.
Do I get to go home?
If they have a leadership that is willing to make peace with Israel, go for it.
Your 2,000-year-old right to return. Can I come home?
If there is a Palestinian state, you can go to a Palestinian state. What business is it of mine what the Palestinian policy is?
I'm from Jerusalem, Emily. Can I go back to Jerusalem?
If that was a part of Palestine, yes, but it is not. This needs to be decided with a leadership that can actually maintain peace agreement with the state of Israel.
How can you have peace
That's up to a future state of Palestine.
I've got to leave it there.
I can't go home to Jerusalem.
Thank you both.
Where my grandfather is buried.
I have to leave it there.
You're going to deny me that right. That's Zionism, ladies and gentlemen.
No, Zionism is the right to self-determination for the Jewish people, which is not mutually exclusive.
Denying the right of indigenous people to return home.